Hey!
Spooky trucks. Spooky trucks.
That's what we are.
Purple trucks. The endless void. Rain.
Remembering all my buttons, for some reason it feels like it's been ages. Like, it's doing the thing again, but that's okay. We'll just muscle through it.
Oh, yeah.
Today, we've got... I don't even know what we have. We've got apples.
Yeah.
We're taking them from Lille to
Aberdeen. We're going to Scotland, everybody.
Yeah.
This is going to be exciting. We've never done this before.
All right, here we go. Here we begin. So,
yeah, hello.
Hey guys.
Guess what Josh has been doing for the last 48 hours straight?
I've been playing fucking Dark Souls.
Dark Souls 2.
Practically every yes, Dark Souls 2. Practically every waking hour since I got it yesterday morning.
Yeah, the dude's been out of sight.
I am just
He's been closeted.
Sucked into this thing. I'm loving it.
Mm-hmm.
It's super fun.
Yeah.
But you know, the question I've been trying to answer while I've been playing it is this as good as the first game?
Ooh, is it as good as the first game? It's hard to talk about sequels, Josh.
It's hard.
It's hard to talk about sequels because the sequels have their own unique problems vis-a-vis the first game in the series oftentimes.
Yeah, and they're
not going to be as innovative, are they, Josh?
Usually not.
Yeah.
No, sometimes yes.
But, I mean, sometimes yes, but probably not.
Yeah, and usually the funny thing is when the sequel is innovative, the people who like the first one hate it.
Right. So it's really in the best interest of the creators to not be innovative, but instead to make like 100 tiny tweaks to improve matters slightly, but in a way that doesn't scare people.
But you know what?
You know, Yahtzee, who I've grown to distrust lately, had a great turn of phrase when he was talking about the new Thief reboot. He was saying that these games were aimed at people who were terrified if their farts were like a pitch higher than they normally are.
Is that talking about the old games or the new games?
The new games.
I see.
Because, you know, he don't rock the boat. He was saying they don't want to rock the boat, you know, and so they don't do any imaginations.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. You know, the funny thing about Dark Souls, though, is that Dark Souls was that refinement of things to Demon Souls.
So what's this? What's this about?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I just want to give an operative example here, which is BioShock 2. You guys remember BioShock 2?
Yeah, there's some people who really didn't like BioShock 2.
But there's some people who think BioShock 2 is the best game in the series.
Oh, wow. That's confusing.
It is. And here's the deal with BioShock 2, right?
Turn off your wipers, you maniac.
Oh, it's not raining anymore. Okay. Here's the deal with BioShock 2. BioShock 2... compared to BioShock 1, it improved the combat system by allowing you to use the spells and the guns at the same time, just like BioShock Infinite did. I mean, that's something that BioShock Infinite borrowed from BioShock 2. It told a nice story with characters, which is arguably something the first game didn't do.
Dork?
It rebalanced the revival system in general.
So we have all that in one sweaty palm, but in the other sweaty palm, the first game
invented Rapture. Which is, you know, I'm not a big fan of BioShock, but that's, you know, it's obvious which game did the creative heavy lifting here, right?
Yeah, and such it is with Dark Souls, right?
Yeah, in a way. What I'm mainly feeling is that Dark Souls 2 is a better game. In some ways, it's better balanced. It's less cheesy. The multiplayer works a lot better.
What do you mean by cheesy?
I don't. Do you want me to go into detail about the ways in which the first game was occasionally cheesy?
Well, I just want an aside about what particular brand of cheese we're talking about here.
Well, let me put it this way: in the first game, most boss fights boiled down. Once you knew what you were doing, to get up in their face where they can't hit you.
Oh, so you mean cheesy as in gameplay cheesy, not as in plot or setting or atmosphere.
I mean,
cheesy.
It's harder to cheese.
That's what game. Yeah, it's harder to cheese this game than it was to cheese the first BioShock. I mean,
Dark Souls. I don't know anything about cheesing BioShock.
Cheesing BioShock.
But
yes.
The thing is, the world in Dark Souls 2, compared to that of Dark Souls 1, is somewhat lacking in cohesion. In my opinion.
Cohesion.
And, you know, I haven't beat the game yet, so I'm sure there's some things that will change in hindsight. Probably there's a connected storyline that goes through these different locations. But, as for the most part, the environment's... Yeah, it's...
Maybe we should just leave it up there.
It's going to keep going up. I'm eventually going to be looking at the ceiling.
Is it your controller? Or?
I don't know what it is. Or at least maybe I'm wrong about. Maybe I will just leave it here. Maybe it's auto-centering.
Yeah, I think that's probably
it's
what's
kind of a
going on.
mystery. Well,
It just really wants you to be able to see the roof of your cab.
I know. But as I was saying,
It's like, sit up straight, Josh.
this just feels like I'm looking a little too far up. But
Yeah, I know. It's trying to compensate for your natural slouch.
anyway, so the first Dark Souls, I think, is a real achievement in what's called environmental storytelling, right? Which is kind of a new trick that video games are doing nowadays. What made that game work is not only were the environments really cool and pregnant with hidden story.
Ooh, yeah.
But they had relationships to one another. I mean, they became more clear the more you played and dug into the lore. But even from the beginning, it's like, down here is this flooded town full of ghosts. But above that is a newer looking town, which seems to be a somewhat dilapidated but otherwise well maintained fortress town full of zombies and everyone's zombies. And there's a pregnant sense that I keep pregnant is the word
Jesus,
of the day.
Jesus, go!
I totaled a van.
You didn't do it for you.
A mini, that is.
Yeah, you minied a Cooper. It is like, why? Oh, okay. I'm all right, he says.
But yeah, there's a sense of baggage here, right? There's a sense that these places are in some way related, and it turns out they certainly are. There's a whole nice subplot going on of how the underclass was.
So
blah, blah,
the
blah.
whole the original Dark Souls is subtler in its storytelling, but
not only subtler, but I think it had a more complete vision.
Yeah, but then again, these are things that reveal themselves over time. Presumably, they're part of the giant layer cake, and even though you've been like busily noshing on this nice piece of cake for like the last 48 hours or so, you still haven't quite gotten deep enough to really tell whether the cake is hollow.
I don't think the cake is hollow. I'm sure this game has a pretty good story. It feels actually a lot like Demon's Souls did. Demon's Souls also just kind of had a bunch of disconnected places. In fact, they weren't even part of the same kingdom, seemingly, whereas in this game they are. But they had all just fallen under the same curse, essentially. And that was the one thing that connected them.
Right.
And there's a good story that deals with the curse. There just isn't a good story connecting all the different environments you visit in that game. And there are a few things that link the environments in Dark Souls 2. Fuck. Don't worry, guys. I remember how to use the ferry.
Yeah. You got it.
There we go.
Let's all go to Calais. No, we're going to Folkestone.
But as I've been saying, it just doesn't seem like there's that much of a through line between them in terms of their relationships with one another. I mean, they seem all built to be cool, and they kind of tell you what's up with them right away.
Where are you going, dude?
I'll get there. Don't worry. I'll get there.
Yeah. So I mean, what I'm hearing here is that there is something about the original Dark Souls, which was kind of a bonbon, but we might not expect that bonbon to be recreated.
Right.
Exactly. This game seems to exist to address concerns that people had about the playability of that bonbon rather than the intangibilities of the particular kind of depth of environmental storytelling and the slow unpeeling of the layers of the cake.
Yes.
The nice piece of cake. This
is true, and yet it's also true that the game has clearly made an effort to tell a story.
Yes.
There are the subtle hints about the thing that was going on, and it borrows a lot of the tonal stylings of Dark Souls, although it handles them with a bit more of an on-the-nose touch, such as one thing the maiden who can heal you, or level you up, says literally is about the crestfallen guy who's kind of given up on everything. She'll actually say, perhaps he's a foreshadowing of what will happen to you.
I bet he is.
Right, and stuff like that. And there's the main theme of this game is clearly curses, and there's actually an item description of a ring that summons you to protect a bell from blah 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 blah. It tells a little story of these two lovers who rang bells to communicate with one another because they couldn't be together for whatever reason. And now these weird gnome guys are protecting this bell for eternity For that...
Ooh, weird gnome guys.
For that is their love. That is their curse. There's a sentence in there.
The gnome curse?
Yeah, I guess.
The writing is not so super hot.
No.
It wasn't so super hot in the first game either, to be
the first game, you know, it didn't have any of this on-the-nose shit, but it also... the sentences were clumsy. It used this really broken Old English where they just seemed to guess about what verb form to use. But, like...
I spanketh thee.
But the light touch was present in terms of the storytelling. They just weren't the best at writing sentences, but it still came together.
Well, you know, I feel like that there's a tendency toward grim darkness that tends to infect any property.
Yeah, there's the Dark Souls. The first works really well by offsetting that with occasional moments of resplendent glory. There's this really great moment where you've completed the first half of your quest with no particular idea your first time through, or what it is you're even trying to accomplish, when suddenly you meet the sunlight goddess who like tells you exactly what you're up to and like congratulates you on having come this far, and there's like this glorious choral music playing. So
okay,
you know,
glorious chorals.
Yeah, that game, it knew how to mix it up and create mood through variation.
And no one likes it. But I just want to interrupt for a second and to say to all our viewers, that the meta game this round is to see if Josh can drive a left-handed truck on a right-handed continent.
I've been doing well so far.
He's been doing great so far.
I crushed a mini, but that was in Europe.
It was. Let's see what happens next.
Yeah, if you don't care about Dark Souls,
then you can at least enjoy
this challenge,
the British two-lane highway,
yeah,
in a backwards truck.
Yeah. I'm used to driving these trucks though, so I don't foresee that many problems. But yeah, I mean, we can account for the difference here. There's a lead director that worked on Demons and Dark Souls who is gone for Dark Souls 2. The torch has been passed.
Yeah, so you know, it is exactly with that kind of torch passing that certain intangibles can be, you know.
Yeah. That said, I'm still enjoying the storytelling in Dark Souls 2. I'm really enjoying the game. I'm going to play it forever. Yeah. So don't read this as too harsh of a criticism. I just feel like something has been lost. But this leads into a broader point I want to talk about, which is whether this problem, where the game is improved in so many ways, but not in this one area, like this is a strange thing to address as a critic, right? Like, I want to play Dark Souls 2 is much better, right? Whereas to address as a work of art, it's maybe not as good. So as a person whose job it hypothetically is to review a game, what do I say? Like, do I say, yeah, this is better, or yeah, this is worse? I mean, assuming I'm forced to give it a score.
That's not the right one.
Hey, okay.
You tell me to yield.
I want to point out that this was not a mistake I made in terms of trying to get onto the wrong side of the road. I simply braked too late, which could be a matter of conditioning.
Maybe, could be. Hey, we haven't looked at our truck yet. Why don't we do that real quick?
No, it's Euro Goodies or something. Oh, no,
it's Trudeau. I like that quite a lot. It's a portmanteau of trade and cadeau, because we're French.
What's cadeau mean?
Presents.
Oh.
Presents. We're bringing Apple's presents.
That's good. That's
Le
pretty
Pomme.
good. Not a bad brand name.
Le Pomme au cadeau. Like giving pears to idiots. Anyway.
What do you think about that point I just said?
Well, what do I think about it? I was about to say before I wanted to check out how sleek our truck was, because I caught a glimpse of it in the rearview mirror when we were jackknifed on top of the yield sign, and I thought, oh, that looks kind of cool, nice design there. But anyway, what I was saying is that somebody who has, in his life, had on many occasions to defend 16-bit Super NES RPGs from people who say they're terrible games, which they are, by saying, but look at the atmosphere, maybe, look at the story, the storytelling is pretty, it's like pretty good for turn-based JRPG combat, guys. I sympathize with this particular dilemma, and I think that it just speaks to one of those things where it's like, games are good for different stuffs. I was put in mind of this by this review of Yahtzee's that I saw today, where he was dismantling wholesale the new Thief game, mostly because it failed to live up to his nostalgia for the previous Thief games, and not necessarily, there were some things that he harped about that were gameplay based, but a lot of it was like it's too serious. It's not. It doesn't feel the right way anymore. The guy has been turned into a generic video game protagonist. There's what happened to the personality and the charm.
And you have to pick apart like what's different and what's worse.
Yeah,
it's sometimes easy to mistake the one for the other.
Yeah, and it's like in the case of the game, if his description is anything to go by, it certainly was both different and worse. Yeah. But I think that you're probably going to. I mean, you might enjoy your initial playthroughs more in a game that does its storytelling better. And I say playthroughs in the case of Dark Souls. It's a game that rewards exploration, but you might actually want to spend more time in the game with better mechanics, and that it is more fun to play.
Yeah,
and
however,
so as an object that might be more useful in that point, but maybe not as beautiful. Yeah, it's design versus art, maybe.
It's true. There's some truth to what you just said, but on the other hand, playing a game which is engaging on the long term in its gameplay, which also happens to be excellent from an artistic perspective, tends to kind of heighten the entire experience.
Well, yeah.
In a really good way, even like when you already know exactly everything.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what this highlights is a thing about video game criticism that is different from criticism of various other forms, which is that games are simultaneously art and engineering.
Yeah.
It's simultaneously a painting and a box girder bridge, and the box girder bridge may be very beautiful, but if it collapses when you try to drive a truck across it, then it was not a good box girder bridge, even if it told the most poignant story imaginable.
Right.
So we have to keep that in mind, and it's like, yes, I mean, obviously, in the ideal world, a box girder bridge would both be able to take like several tanker trucks at once, and also would make a grown man weep with its sweeping beauty.
Yeah.
But you can't ask for that from everything.
Yeah.
It's not likely to come around. It's frankly not likely to come around more than once in a franchise.
Yes.
I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, even like a super top tier franchise, like. There is a little something missing from We Love Katamari or We Heart Katamari that was present in Katamari Damacy.
And there's a hell of a lot missing from beautiful Katamari.
Well, let's not even speak of beautiful Katamari.
Yeah, it's true.
My point being that when you get that lightning in a bottle, it can be hard to capture it again. But a designer might know this. It's like, well, we were maybe not going to be able to achieve the subtlety of storytelling that was there before. We're missing some of the people who were responsible for that, or time has just moved on. Also, it's kind of harder to get as excited about a world that you've already been in this so much. Even though I know it's not exactly the same thing, but it sure looks a lot like it, And so, maybe what you do as a responsible creator who wants to make something good that is also commercially viable is to be, well, what can we improve? Maybe we can shore up these struts a little bit, perhaps at the cost of the willowy curvature of the original.
Yeah. So I guess when it comes to addressing Dark Souls 2's success, it becomes important to figure out whether or not the creator had that degree of humility, or whether he tried to reach the same heights and failed.
Doesn't matter.
I think yes.
It matters in as much as you can tell from the game, I think.
Sure.
Like the exteriority of that, what was actually going on in the creator's head is not.
Well, yeah,
is not important. It's whether that understance is.
If there's parts of the game which feel like they're overreaching, then that's a problem.
And that's the thing. And part of what you're saying is like the turgid, dance of the doomed go like what were they, gnomes? Love gnomes.
Yeah.
The dance of the doomed love gnomes suggests that
it's possible that
somebody may have bitten
is
off
intended as self-parody.
More than they could chew. Yeah, possibly.
It certainly comes off as self-parody one way or the other. And there's also
somebody might have just been bored one afternoon.
Yeah, there's also some kind of gross moments, like I just got done with this boss whose entire backstory seems to be that she was spurned by her lover, and so she turned into a gross headless poison snake.
I mean, on the one hand, there is a lot of fairy tale precedence for this story. On the other hand.
Not only is
is
it not creative or interesting, it's actively kind of gross.
Right.
And everything I would say in the first Dark Souls was creative and interesting, and nothing was gross.
Nothing was gross in Dark Souls. Nothing was
I'm
gross
trying
in
to.
Dark Souls.
I'm trying to. Am I getting my words on that? I can't think of anything gross in Dark Souls. Certainly
I don't
nothing
know.
to that.
I've never played. I didn't play all the way through Dark Souls. But anyway, so this game gives you some qualms. And the original Dark Souls it didn't give you some qualms.
Yeah, I prefer to have qualms about the nitty gritty of gameplay mechanics than I do about
the headless Spider Woman and her archetype.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but it is funny because I am probably going to play Dark Souls 2 even more than I played Dark Souls 1, but I'm probably not going to enjoy myself as much for all of those hours. So it's an interesting little quagmire.
It might be better to make a beautiful bridge that might just collapse than to make it drab but reliable one.
The problem I have with this analogy is that Dark Souls didn't collapse at any point.
I know. But there were problems with the gameplay in Dark Souls. It was a bit creaky.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit creaky. It had personality. Just like the Broadway Bridge back in Portland where I came from. The birds like to build their nests on it. That was an engineering problem, but also it means that there was a lot of tweeting.
The happy
Particularly
accident.
during the dawn and dusk hours, you'd roll down your windows, you came across... If you think I'm done talking about this...
No, go.
You'd roll down your windows when you came across it, like in the sort of that crepuscular moment when the sun was beginning to like set and like there were glimmers across the... Willamette River, and then it's just so much tweeting, like the noise. I've never had a noise like it, and it was also a drawbridge, so you get the vroom of tires going over a metal grating and the tweets at once. It was a very good noise, and that's like Dark Souls. Because the city, it was kind of a flaw that there was like bird shit all over it all the time.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, it's very true. The little flaws in Dark Souls do give it a bit of personality.
Yeah.
Like that's a game about.
It's like a smashed cake.
Yeah, that's when you boil it down to the core themes. That's a game about. That's a game about overcoming intimidation, right?
Right.
And so it becomes kind of important to that theme that many of the bosses get easy when you get right the fuck up in their faces.
Oh yeah, and also the extreme difficulty curve that has been the source of some complaints is also definitely right in there with that. It has that ludonarrative harmony that I was talking about.
Yeah, and that's something Dark Souls 2 maintained proudly. I mean, it's probably even harder than the first game.
Mm-hmm.
It's.
How many times did you die during the tutorial?
I died twice during the tutorial.
Twice, and then you had a sex change by accident.
Yeah, I had a sex change by accident. Dark Souls 2 is a game where you have to fight two grinning cyclopes in order to reclaim
giant rumps.
Yes, just fat asses,
well-rendered
big
rumps.
fatties. In order to reclaim your true gender, if you make the same mistakes I did.
Don't climb into the coffin without knowing what's going to happen. It's just never a good idea.
In the first game, climbing into the coffin introduced you to Grave Lord Nito, who could teach you the power.
Lord Nito.
Yes,
Grave Lord Nito
with an eye. He's a skeleton made of other skeletons.
Nito.
Yeah. He taught me the power of grave lording.
Well, in this one, he takes away your gender. He gives you another one.
It is a curious little.
It's like Ranma 1/2, but with like cyclopes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's clear this is still a game with all these wonderful little discoveries to make.
We done with that one?
I guess.
Yeah. We might circle back. We often do.
Yeah.
But I think that since you've been beating a horse that you're way more invested in than I am, I think that I'm going to beat my horse for a little while now.
Beat your horse.
As some of y'all are, I don't know, I don't really talk about this. I play music a little bit, sometimes, on and off for like the last decade. And my brother and I have been in bands over the course of this time, on and off, and we're like, when we moved to New York, we were like, oh, right, now we're gonna live together. We're gonna do this. We're gonna go out. We're gonna play shows. We're gonna make a lot of music, and we did. But the whole playing shows thing kind of got lost because there are a lot of there are logistical problems with being poor and trying to play rock music in New York. And one of them is space, and one of them is noise, and one of them is lugging a whole lot of shit everywhere. So we learned our lesson over time. We streamlined. We kind of did more theater than music for a long time, but now we got a drummer, we got a practice space, and we just recorded some demos last time, and we're about ready to go out and play some gigs, and that's very exciting. I'm going to, those of y'all who follow my Tumblr, I'm going to be sharing some of these demos soon, because they actually came out sounding pretty good despite the primitive recording quality that we did. But
music sounds pretty good, guys. I say, having heard it with two walls between me and it.
Yeah, no, and without the drummies. But you know what? that's a good sign. Like, you know, if it still sounds okay once it's been filtered through most of an apartment. But so we're ready. So we're like musically ready to go. Pretty much, we got, you know, enough songs for a short set and all this. But what we don't have is a name. Mm-hmm. And part of the business about not having a name is that we don't have an idea either. We don't have a point. We don't have a style.
Yeah. I would say that your lyrics express earnest feelings and thoughts through a vague detachment, which is many lyrics, but it's also your lyrics.
Yeah.
And you have a particular style about it, which is difficult to put one's finger on. It has a very precise vocabulary in its word choice.
Yeah, yeah.
It's poetical.
Yeah, yeah.
It could be read as poetry, probably, and not be much worse for wear.
My lyrics tend to be too metrical. They tend to, you could read them as da 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 da, which can sound a little bit naff when it is sung in a rock format. Because I wrote poetry before I wrote lyrics, guys.
Right. Yeah. So when Isaac asked me to help name his band, the first things that came to my gut were sort of schmoopy and sort of isolationist, like Pale Daylight was one idea.
Oh, yes. Pale Daylight.
But
nobody went for Pale Daylight.
Yeah.
I liked Rumbly a lot.
Rumbly, yeah.
Rumbly was, because I think that probably came from the whole separated by two wall, like by a number of walls from our music.
I can't rember what that came from, honestly.
Your stomach.
Maybe. I think it was because I actually thought about calling it Grumbly.
That would be much more accurate. I'll see if I can sell them on Grumbly. I like that a lot.
Sure.
Sergeant Grumbles. There's the name. But anyway,
Isaac and I have been making sport of coming up with terrible band names.
This is which has happened to me every single time I've tried to name a band throughout the course of my musical career.
Yeah.
And the but sort of the thing that I wanted to do differently this time, the last couple of times, basically, we just, you know, we bullshitted around until we found a name that we thought was clever enough or had a highfalutin enough reference attached to it that people would be, like, somewhat curious about. Like, we had a...
Oh, call yourself Borges' Labyrinth. That's very highfalutin.
We're not a prog band. I had to tell Jono that, too. We're not a prog band. That's like not even a proper prog band. Like Borges Labyrinth would be something like, you know, Mouse on Mars or whatever the fuck they're called. Just like, no, not Mouse on Mars, the other one, the Mars Volta. There we go. It's kind of that's the kind of band that is like the Mars Volta would have a name like that.
The Mars Voltaire.
Josh has been just tickling my gorge on purpose.
I don't know why he doesn't like the Twilight Friend Zone.
Not only can I kind of not be friends with you anymore because he suggested that I call my band the Twilight Friend Zone, but
it's a brilliant name.
Can we tell? Can I tell them the best band name we've ever come up with, or are you?
Go for it.
The best name that Josh has ever come up with is Radiohead UK, and that's a joke that you might get, or you might not, frankly, but I don't care. It's the best band name I've ever heard. So the issue that I want to, like, speaking of the bigger idea here, is less I need a band name, which I do.
You need a
name my band, everybody.
Yeah. You don't just need a band name. You need a name for your band.
Yeah, and more than that, it's like what I was saying is that the thing that I want to do to separate this group from like other things that we've done is that I'd like to have like an idea. You know, I'd like to have sort of we come on stage and we're all thinking we're, you know, doing the same thing, and, you know, I watch like videos of bands like Devo and like, you know, all of your favorite bands who have worn matching outfits over the course of, you know, history, or, you know, either literally or figuratively matching outfits. And they're like, you know, do I have a story to tell? I mean, even like if it's a completely bullshit story, I'd like to have a story. I'd like to have a story that says something as much as like the cheekbones from the guy from The Verve said, you know. Even that is preferable to me to having no story.
Yeah.
And so, but the problem is that we're just a couple, like some lumping dudes who play nerdy music. And so, when I'm thinking about naming a band, I kind of have to think about the purposefulness of this action. And what the purposefulness of this action mostly is for me is just like it's fun public exercise. So, but there's already a band called Joggers.
Damn. How about you reference Murakami's book about running?
What we talk about when we talk about about very low level indie rock. Yeah.
You could call the band What I Talk About.
We need to talk about Kevin.
I kind of like What I Talk About.
What I talk about?
Or What We Talk About.
What we talk about. Well, that is definitely like eating its own tail in terms of...
yeah, that title is in turn a reference to something else, which I can't place right now, but...
Yeah, it is.
Do you know what it is?
It's love, I think, what we talk about when we talk about love.
That's I should know who that is.
But anyway, yeah, once you've heard the music, you should tell me what kind of band sounds like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's come up with some bad names.
Some bad names?
Yeah.
Grunko.
Grunko.
Yeah.
How about...
Seed-Fisted Find.
Ooh, tell the Emma Pollock story.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, my bands over the course of the years have been named The Enormous Rooms, which is an E.E. Cummings reference. Slapstick Tragedy, which is a Tennessee Williams reference. You can tell that Eben had a hand in both of these because he's been a theater nerd since he was in diapers. Emperor Norton, which is a reference to Emperor Norton, who, if you don't know who Emperor Norton is, you should Google that because it's a great fact and also a nerd fact. I learned about who Emperor Norton was from reading Sandman comics, which is a terrible way to learn anything. And the latest one was Urban Growth Boundary. This is what happens when Eben and I run out of ideas. Urban Growth Boundary, which is a reference to an imaginary line that used to circle Portland, Oregon, and keep it from sprawling out into the suburbs, but doesn't anymore because nothing gold can stay.
Not a bad name.
Yeah, totally original too. So
doesn't remind me of anything.
Yeah. That's my problem.
Maybe
People think I'm wittier than I am because I just pepper my conversation with things that I stole from other people, and
you know, it's a good way to play it.
Yeah, pretty much. But anywho, so I went to see Emma Pollock of the Delgados. Delgados is one of my favorite bands. A band hampered by a terrible name.
Yeah, what the hell does that name even mean?
They are named after a professional cyclist.
Oh no.
Yeah, named Jose Delgado, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Which is why their album's called Peloton, which is a kind of bicycle race. Yeah, right? That's terrible. The Delgados are like the example of a band that had no story at all. They were just a bunch of like funny-looking schlubs who, you know, happened to start their own record label and have, you know, put out some of my favorite music, and the record labels put out a lot of my favorite music.
Yeah, it's like they put out this really nice rough-edged rock album, and then as they developed, they put out this weird, like, string-laden, angsty rock stuff, which is also pretty good. Although, like, for a completely different audience. Their song actually ended up being the intro of the anime Gunslinger Girl, which, don't watch it unless you don't watch it unless you it would probably be impossible to watch Gunslinger Girl without being embarrassed these days.
I really wouldn't watch Gunslinger Girl, and we're not going to admit that we liked it.
I loved it.
We both loved it at one point in our lives. Please don't judge us. We thought it was cleverer than it was. Anywho,
it was cleverer than its source material.
It was cleverer than its source material. It was the director tried to do something that pointed out what the source material was doing uncritically.
Right. And
we responded to that, I would like to think. Anywho, so anyway, so the Delgados is like the perfect example. They sounded like 3 or 4 different things over the course of their careers. They had this like really long career, but they never got traction, and they kind of died unmourned, except by a few people. But so I got into them after they'd broken up, but I saw one of the front folk, Emma Pollock, at a show in Portland, and I went up to her afterwards with the CD of hers that I just bought, and I was like, my band that I'm in with my brother, we cover a song of yours. And she was like, oh, that's great. And I told her which song it was, and she was like, what's the name of your band? And I said, Urban Growth Boundary. And she said, Urban Growth Foundry! And then proceeded to make out her signature on the CD to Urban Growth Foundry. And if we'd been smart,
Yeah.
we would have changed our name to Urban Growth Foundry, which I told Evan at the time. And maybe if he hadn't rejected that name out of hand, then we could still have that name. The new band could be called Urban Growth Foundry.
It's not too late.
You know,
it's a great name.
It's a great game.
This is the great game.
I think that, I mean, it's so ironic that I think that it might even work for this. We were Urban Growth Foundry, now we're Urban Growth Foundry.
Yeah, I mean, the story of the bad band name in Parks and Rec, Mouse Rat, is that they used to be called Rat Mouse.
I love fictional bands, and I love that writers are somehow able to give their fictional bands much better names
There's
than
a really
any band
good
ever
scene
had.
where the guy in the band is listing all the names they used to have, and it's a gold mine, but I can't remember any of them.
Oh God, the gold standard is Wayne's World, Crucial Taunt, opened for by the Shitty Beatles.
The Shitty Beatles. That's almost as good as Radiohead UK.
But Eddie, yeah.
So I mean, I think are we done with that one?
Yeah.
We have so much trucks left. What are we gonna do?
I told you this one was going to be substantial, but you didn't believe me.
It's long. It's too long.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about. It was going to be too long. We have to traverse the entirety of Glaswegian. Maybe we, depending on how long it is when we're done, maybe we can.
It's not going to be twice as long as an episode.
I was going to say we could.
It's going to be
divvy it up.
This is going to be approximately 20% longer than your average episode.
Oh well, we did a really short one last time.
Yeah.
So this is value for money. The only flaw in this plan is that we have about 40 minutes of conversation stored up. And from here on, it's going to get real vague.
I don't think it's even been 40 minutes, unfortunately. I think we're performing below our standard.
Holy shit.
Well, let's just get jokey. I liked it when the last episode was funny.
Oh, yeah? You did? Well, boy, there's nothing to bring out humor in folks like saying, you know what, it's time for us to start making some jokes, huh? Let's name a band. Let's think of funny names from a band.
Euro Talk Simulator.
Chicken butt fucker. We could use this time to try to compose an opening theme song for trucks, which people have remarked does not exist.
And when you feel like...
What we really ought to do is just sing Delgado's song.
I can't remember that name of the lyrics, except from Hate. Hate was the one I listened to.
Yeah, I never really. I thought that one was like had overbalanced a little bit too much into string laden.
I agree, but
nothingness.
I liked it when I was a teenager.
Absolutely.
There was one more thing I wanted to mention in the world of video games.
Yeah, tell me about that.
BioShock.
More like Biocock.
Yeah, I don't really like BioShock, but even then, when I was talking about Dark Souls,
you had to bring up BioShock.
I made a BioShock comparison, just because BioShock is this critical touchstone.
Mm-hmm.
I read this pretty cool article recently, which I'll try and remember to link in the description, which made the point that probably the whole reason we have the essayistic video games criticism scene nowadays, which is my favorite scene,
is because of BioShock Infinite?
Is because of BioShock 1.
Oh,
Did you know?
No, I didn't.
Did you know?
No, I didn't.
That Clint Hocking, designer of the original Splinter Cell and Far Cry 2, who's now apparently, rumor has it, working on Left 4 Dead 3. One of my favorite game designers. He actually coined the term ludonarrative dissonance.
Yeah.
With regard to BioShock.
So he made a public criticism of BioShock when it came out.
Yeah.
And was it that gesture that kicked the whole thing off, or were there a bunch of different people who were saying similar things at the time? I
mean, he definitely gave us a term that we use a hell of a lot in ludonarrative dissonance. He probably did inspire a lot of people to start thinking about games in that way, because kind of the point of that little post he made, it was a blog post, it wasn't even a full essay, is that, and it's still a surprisingly subtle point about BioShock, and a more intricate usage of the term ludonarrative dissonance than you tend to hear nowadays. His point was that this is a narrative about libertarian ideals and the pursuit of power.
Right.
And but meanwhile, it was a game that didn't reward you for actually seeking power from the Little Sisters. If you killed them, you would get more power. But if you let them live, in the long run, you would get more and more power. I might be remembering this slightly wrongly, but in his view, the themes that the gameplay put forward were not only did they fail to extrapolate on the themes of the story, but they seemed to tell the opposite tale.
Well, I mean, was BioShock plot-wise uncomplicatedly pro-libertarian?
No, it was anti-libertarian.
Right.
And yeah,
so
you can respond to Clint Hawking's article by saying that this dissonance is intentional. But still, like, that was the point he was making.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so what do you suppose it is about BioShock that prompted this sort of outflowing of sort of complicated criticism of video games? Where
I think it was the first mainstream game that made a huge point about having a point.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Like,
I'm trying to think of an earlier example, and I'm not coming up with one.
You can point at earlier examples of environmental storytelling to a degree, which is something that BioShock is held up as kind of the flagship game for. Like Marathon had some environmental storytelling. Remember the first time you went over to the alien ship and it just looked so different from the dark and murky corridors you've been inhabiting up until that point?
Yeah,
like, that was really cool.
Yeah, what about
and
Mist?
Half-Life,
Yeah,
Mist, totally Mist. And Half-Life's transit system introduction.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah,
that was pretty smart.
Yeah,
that was that was a really important thing they did.
But all of these things are mostly just in service of making the game cool, right?
Yeah.
Whereas BioShock used it to say the same things about the world, and you could take issue with the complexity and the nuance of its points.
I certainly could.
But it's still, it was using not only the medium of games, but the medium of mainstream AAA high-budget shooter games
to have a theme. That's the thing. It had a theme.
Right.
And that was like a surprising and new thing to do, and certainly paved the way for games like Spec Ops or Far Cry or Far Cry 2.
Like practically every goddamn thing that comes out nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not everything.
No.
Not Titanfall.
A lot of things.
Frankly, not Dark Souls either.
Dark Souls, the first, I would say, has some of that going on, but I won't extrapolate on that.
Fantasy games tend to, like, to a greater or lesser degree, but that's kind of, it's pretty easy to dismiss that as nerd shit if you're not looking for it, if you know what I mean.
Well, here's the thing. With Dark Souls, it's what it does with the gameplay, really. It's got all these little narratives about people reacting to the difficulty of their situation in various ways.
Yeah, you have to dig a little bit.
A little.
I mean, there are games like, games in the past have had messages. It's whether they, whether it is be true to yourself or...
I think it's indisputable that Dark Souls owes some debt to BioShock. Dark Souls is full of environmental storytelling.
Right.
But yeah, it's whatever.
Anyway, so BioShock was the pioneer of this particular thing within this particular frame of games for grown-ups, which were AAA, high-budget games for grown-ups.
Yeah, and that really resonated with a lot of people. I'm sure some other game would have done it eventually, but BioShock has the singular honor of being the one that woke everybody up in a way.
And the pioneer is not usually the best thing as a general matter. But
although I actually think that people ought to have picked up on more of this stuff in Half-Life 2. But that's another story.
Everybody loves Half-Life 2. The problem,
Half-Life 2 these days kind of gets, like, people say, oh, it's dated, it's not that special anymore. I think these people are so wrong. That game is amazing.
Yeah. Well, but it has no characters to speak of.
It has Breen. Breen is basically the BioShock villain of Half-Life 2, in that he represents the ideological folly of the city that he governs.
I think that it is like...
It's not as in your face about it as BioShock is.
Yeah, but it's like the fact that he's the only character to speak of is still,
There's also Alex, who doesn't develop, but she's there. She's there to add a character to many of the goings on. Alex is not very good.
Nobody in the game is particularly good.
Oh, Breen is great,
except Breen. But this is Valve.
Yeah,
Valve doesn't do on-screen characters that are more than a pile of quirks in a general matter.
Basically. GLaDOS is probably their best character.
Yeah. I mean, she kind of started off as a pile of quirks and and developed sentience.
When it comes to environmental storytelling, the game that takes the cake is probably Portal 1.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I thought you were riffing on my cake metaphor from before, but no, you were riffing on something which we will not discuss, lest we burst into flame.
But yeah, the funny thing is that now, after Bioshock Infinite came out, and most of the essayistic game writing scene hated it, they're actually going back to look at Bioshock and finding it wanting, which I think is cool. It's kind of the Emperor has no clothes moment, which you have to love, but more than that, it shows that we've all learned a lot over the past few years since Bioshock came out, and learned to get smarter about these games than we initially were.
Yeah, we're developing. I mean, it's like games, folks. I mean, I hasten to add that we're like talking about a small portion of the game viewing community, but you know that's always what a critical element is. But it's also a small proportion of the critical community in gaming. But
small but growing, I would say.
Small, growing, and influential. Maybe.
Yeah, totally influential.
Is
Leigh Alexander is editor-in-chief for Gamma Sutra.
Yeah, what he said. Is that delivers. They're developing muscles. They're developing muscles that critics in other fields had to develop. And this is, you were talking about Roger Ebert in the previous one, how there's this sort of like high art, low art. Hey, we can talk about these things kind of thing that he did. And I think that there's something of that kidney afoot.
Yeah.
Kidney foot.
Yeah.
Kidney foot.
Kidney foot.
Kidney foot. Good name for a band?
No. Kidney Bean would be actually a better name.
I was looking at Budgie. I thought I named the band Budgie.
Budgie. How do you spell that?
Okay. So Josh doesn't know what a bird is, so that's fine. But a budgie is short for budgerigar, which is what the British call parakeets. Okay. Or budgerigar, if you prefer.
How do you spell that?
Budgie, like bungee, except for the D. Budgie, and then I looked it up, and apparently Budgie was a Welsh heavy metal band from the 70s. I looked up Parakeet. Parakeet is a sort of slightly atmospheric rock trio from today. You might actually like the music of Parakeet. I kind of like the music of Parakeet.
Surely there's a degree to which you don't have to worry about these old defunct bands.
Well, Parakeet isn't defunct, but Budgie is, and Budgie was sufficiently well known that, Budgie Band is a Google, autocomplete, and they have a Wikipedia page and all this, and some hilarious videos on YouTube because they were Welsh and from the 70s and played heavy metal. Both of these bands, bassist front people who played bass and sang.
Oh, that's what you are.
That's what I am. Yeah. Well, some of the time. And
you know what's rare but beautiful?
What?
Lead drummers.
Oh yeah.
The Music Orchestra had one of those sometimes.
And Genesis.
Hey,
with the spectacular Phil Collins.
I don't know if I'm singing Genesis. Oh, that's Enigma.
What are you doing? That's the first thing that comes into your head. Not Don't Stop Believin'.
I never knew the name of the band that did that song.
Well, God, we're learning so much today, you and I.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm graduating up the pet bird scale. I then went to Cockatiel. There's no band called Cockatiel, but I don't think that the rest of them are going to go for Cockatiel because there's cock in it.
You should call your band Bird Burger. Bird Burger. Bird Burger. It's kind of hard to say. Try it.
That's not a plus.
Try it.
Bird Burger.
See how your
Bird
mouth,
Burger.
Your mouth kind of has to be in the R shape the entire time you're saying that?
Yeah,
Yeah, don't call your band Bird Burger. I liked it a lot less after I said it.
Some sort of pop culture reference, Give it an Adventure Time reference.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I was reminded of Princess Bubblegum's Bald Blambergler.
Yeah.
There when you said that.
Let's call your band I'm trying to think of a name for a military band in the Canned Kingdom. Like, I'm trying to put those pieces together in my head, and it's not happening very efficiently.
Yeah, no, this
Like
is...
Joanna Newsom's accompanying band sometimes is called the Rough and Ready Secession Day Parade, which is great.
No, it's not. That's insufferable and makes me sad.
It's excellent.
Her backing band on East was called the East Street Band.
Yeah.
Because of Bruce Springsteen.
That's actually the Rough and Ready Secession Day Parade.
Oh.
That's the one.
Oh, wow.
They just didn't name the album after that. Rough and Ready.
That's good.
Rough and Ready is apparently a small town in like the Midwest or the South that decided to secede.
Oh, one of those places.
Yes. So there's a backstory to this.
Yeah. That is reflected in the song off of the bird. I'm loving this windy British countryside. Yeah, I know. It looks totally like England.
Yeah,
which is nice.
There should be more hedges.
We hardly spend it. Hedges. We hardly spend any time in Britain on these Euro truck rambles, and so
it's got the hilliness though. That's definitely.
That's true.
Some English.
And you're stuck behind a terrible driver on a slow road, which is also very British.
You know, I think all these drivers are equally good. They all run on the same AI.
You're telling me things that are breaking my immersion. Don't break my immersion.
No
Josh.
hedges, same driver AI for everybody. It's just Rough and Ready Secession Day Parade.
Oh God, we have like 5 hours left. We're gonna be here forever.
We need one more topic.
We miscalculated. Oh God almighty.
Leave in the comments one more topic for us to be talking about
Do it,
right now.
please, now. I beg of you. That's not how time works, Isaac.
Hey, you've ruined the joke that I've been making in like so many of these videos.
Oh no. Oh no. See, this is what happens when we don't prepare.
Yeah. Video's over.
You may go about your business. The rest of it will be us humming.
I really love Bossa Nova. I haven't been on the Bossa Nova train lately. It's hard to find more Bossa Nova.
You know, there was a Tumblr bird on my bird Tumblr called a Bossa Nova.
That's what you should call the band.
Bossa Nova?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pun. It means drinking water in French.
It also sounds like a man from Brooklyn is telling you that you're the boss of a
The
man.
boss of North. You're the boss of North.
A place called
He's the
Noah.
boss of North.
A place called Noah.
I'm the boss down south. He's the boss of North. You see?
Yes.
You see what I did there?
I see. That's an imaginary road that we can't drive on.
Oh God, but it's beautiful. I want to drive on it.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we can see it. Maybe it's a reflection of the road we're actually on, and it's being very clever.
There's no.
Oh God, those houses look so nice. I want to move to this part of the country. I want to move to Scotland.
Yeah, we're in Scotland now.
Yeah, we're totally in Scotland. Yep.
Cool.
We passed Newcastle a while ago. I once took a train up here along the very route that we're taking through these downs, which is why I know that they look approximately correct. And
cool.
I was incredibly feverish at the time. I got so sick in Britain. So sick. I went and saw Momus. The one and only time that I saw Momus, and I was sick. It was on my birthday. I was sick enough that I could barely stand. And he put on a trashy blonde wig and sang karaoke versions of his songs quite badly. And I left actively hallucinating. And then I got on a train the next day to Edinburgh. And I curled up on the floor of the people who I had come to stay with, who I barely knew. It was the brother of a friend of mine and his wife. And I said, "I'm sorry, but I have a terrible cold. Can I just lay here for the next 16 hours?" And to their eternal credit, they said, "Sure."
That's wonderful.
They brought me vegetarian haggis and neeps and tatties. And I felt...
haggis is delicious, and if you haven't tried it, you should.
Yeah. I heartily recommend basically everything about a Burns night. It's cheesy, like not in a gameplay sense. But as far as like annual holidays go, a Burns night is one that you can pretty much just get away with. You get your haggis, you get your whiskey, and you read the poetry of Robert Burns. I mean, what can go wrong, frankly?
That was a great story. Let me tell you a story.
Is it a travel story?
It's sunset now, right? Not sunrise.
In the game?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been driving my headlights on all day.
Wow. Was that your story?
Yes.
Jesus. Do you want me to give you another story?
Yes.
From the same trip. This is before, or this was after I'd recovered a little bit, and I was wandering around Edinburgh. And Edinburgh, for those who don't know, is like Portland, Oregon, except it has castles and like cobblestones. It is one of the best places that I've ever been, and I was wandering around the university quarter. I wanted to look at a museum of ancient brass instruments at this university, which I did, and they're great. I love old instruments. And I came out, and I saw a thrift store called the Rusty Zip. And I went into the Rusty Zip, and there was a lady behind the counter who was Asian and had a Scottish accent because she was Scottish, and asked me if I wanted to look at her denims. And I said, "Oh yes, please sell me some denims." And I tried on the denims, and I walked out of that store with a pair of Edinburgh denims.
Do you still have them?
Oh, I cannot fit into my Edinburgh denims anymore. That was a long time ago. I am not the charming young man who, like, blushed to the point of insensibility in the face of this woman trying to sell me some denims.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
Blushing.
it was
situation.
It was just like I was overwhelmed by the sheer indie spank fantasy of the whole thing.
Indie spank fantasy.
Yeah, no, it was. My life had been overtaken by a really quirky movie, and I nearly died because I can't stand that kind of shit.
I see. Yes. Okay. I the only word that was mysterious to me was indie. But now I understand.
I was referring to Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. If you haven't seen the movie, it might not make sense.
Is there a bit where he? I've seen that movie, but I don't remember that.
That's pretty solid. I gotta give you some points for that. Oh lordy,
almost there. Only 3 hours to go. I wish I could think of a travel story, but I've been trying and I can't.
Oh. Scottish accents. If you want to like break me, then have a Scottish accent. That's essentially the point of that story.
My only travel has been, I've traveled much less since becoming an independent young man.
It's true. It's harder to travel.
Most of my travel stories are like, my parents took me to Helsinki, and the herring was delicious.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're kind of showing our class background here.
A little bit. Can't hide it.
I didn't really travel with my parents much when I was young. They tended to give me money, and I would leave. Which,
that sounds great.
Yeah, no.
I mean, that's what they did with me in college. So.
That was college. It's just like go.
Yeah. I mean, I continue to live in New York, so I owe them that.
Hooray! Yeah.
Tell us more about China.
So they do this thing in the Muslim quarter of Xi'an, where they have new potatoes, like little baby new potatoes. And they deep fry them. They deep fry them a little bit, and then they put the new potatoes in a little. This is all on the street. This is a street stand, and they put the new potatoes then into a frying pan after you've sort of semi deep fried them, so they're still they're like a little bit cooked, but they're still crispy. And then they pan fry them, and they put on, while they're pan frying them, they put on some scallions, some salt, some chili pepper, some some cumin, some chili powder, chili peppers, and then they fry that up for you for a little while until they're done, and then they give them to you in a little cup. And it is one of the best foods I think I've ever encountered.
That sounds really good.
There's a similar thing they do with like sort of big cubes of pasta, which is also pretty great. There's a lot of like rose jelly, and it's in the desserts and the sweet stuff, and like dates and walnuts. It's a very good place in the world to be for food. That sort of like area between China proper and sort of the Muslim Central Asian countries, because you get these like noodle lamb soups that are just like, you got the you got the Chinese noodle technology and the Central Asian lamb technology. And as a combo, it is very difficult to beat. There's food. There's architecture. I mean, what am I going to say, man? I've already basically said the thing that I wanted to say, which is that it is, you know...
The one time I was allowed to travel, not travel alone, but go off on my own while traveling was in Venice. And you've heard this story. Do you remember it? It was kind of cool. I walked around. I like got off the tourist track in Venice, and what it turns out exists off the tourist track in Venice is just older people in their homes who are scowling at you.
Oh my. You missed your turn off there.
God, no.
You're really fucked now.
Not this.
It's a divided highway.
Let's consult the map. That looks like it's a minor detour. We just have to take a longer road over.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
A longer, slow road. Or...
No, don't do that.
It's too late. We're in the thick of it now.
You're definitely in the thick of it, but I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish. Oh my god.
Success. I didn't even get into an accident. Oh wait. What's happening? Why can't I drive forward?
I don't know. Let's look at the...
No, we're fine. I bonked my cargo, but we're fine.
Yeah, just a little cargo bonk.
Yeah. I mean, the only real event that happened here, I once wrote an essay about this, which derived a point about the difference between European cities and American cities, which is that American cities are more well-planned than European cities. European cities wear their history in their garbage organization.
That is definitely a point that would be made by a very young person.
Yeah. It's not overall true what I've just said.
Yeah, but, and also it is because their cities are older than ours.
Well, yes, that is the thing.
And mostly weren't designed with cars in mind.
Well, of course. I mean, that's like exactly what I just said.
I know. It's just like that's a sentence though.
Whatever. But yeah, I mean, I was anyway. The result of this confusing organization was that I really have to go to the bathroom, and I ended up having to pee in the Aquabus stop. I peed right there into the Venetian canals, which is kind of a romantic act, if you ask me. But anyway...
were you being stared at disapprovingly by old people while you were peeing into the canal?
I tried to do it stealthily, but unfortunately a gorgeous Venetian woman did get onto the water bus stop while I was in the act, and she said, "Ew," and it was the first time I'd ever understood Italian.
That, I don't know about you, but that might have been enough to sexually stunt me for life. That's a tough one to walk off.
Well, you know.
The scorn of a beautiful time.
I got to leave the country behind forever, so...
Well, that's moments of understanding. You know?
If it had happened in New York, then I would have probably had to leave New York forever.
You'll come back to the scene of the tragedy one day.
Then again, New York is a place where it's more expected to see people peeing.
That's true, and there are no canals to pee into. Well, the Gowanus. Nobody would. The Gowanus would probably improve slightly if you peed into it. But yeah, no. That's sort of the thing, really. I mean, there's this impulse when you travel to take away some sort of point or idea or lesson, and if any of y'all listen to Moth Podcast, do you listen to Moth Podcast at all?
I don't think I've even heard of that.
Okay, anyway, it's a storytelling thing where it's essentially like, you know...
I only listen to two white guys talking about video games, the podcast. I actually don't.
Yeah. Well, I do.
Unless you count ours.
Or Low Tax and Schmarky.
That's not really a podcast.
Not really guys either. But you know, it's the storytelling podcast where, you know, it's like the most NPR thing in the entire world, where, you know, people who are mostly from New York, or, well, people tell stories on stage, essentially, true stories about their lives on stage without notes.
That's
as the tagline goes.
Sounds good if you can come in with a story in mind.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, that's the point. Like, they select people with good stories, but it's, as it is both intended for and derived from a very NPR kind of audience, a very artsy scene kind of audience initially, then there tends to be a few categories that these stories tend to fall into. and some of them are more insufferable than others. And there are some over the years that I've grown to really detest, like the "I love my grandpa" story, where young people grow up and learn that there was some truth in grandpa's ancient folksy wisdom, which tends to be terrible. The one that I hate the absolute most is that I went to a third world country to find myself story, which never fails to set my teeth on edge because of the sheer balls out self-centeredness of it, and how the very important lessons about life that they have learned. And it's like, I just want to put it out here for the record that I have never learned an important lesson about life by looking at how brown people are.
I thought you were about to say you've never learned an important lesson about life outside of the United States of America.
No, actually, that's not entirely true. But I have never traveled in order to find myself, and possibly as a result of this, I as yet have no idea where I am located. Maybe that's my problem, is that I should have been trying to find myself all of that time, and mostly I was just eating street food at the various places that I ended up.
The action of trying to find yourself is bullshit, and you were right to not pursue that course.
Yeah, I'm pretty much down with that. With that assertion. Yeah, no, I think that mostly what we do when we travel is look at cool buildings and eat some food.
Sometimes see some art.
Sometimes have like serious mental problems.
I've managed to avoid that one.
Not me, but then again, I'm prone to those. Actually, one of the best ones was the first time I went to Italy, and I looked at so much art that just like my mind shut down. It's the thing that happens.
Oh, God, that's not what happens.
They even have a name
for
it.
A bunch of classical art.
What happens to your mind?
They'll start to look the same.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Must be great not being very sensitive.
I'm not very visual. Jerk.
I'm not saying you're a Philistine, just that you don't have an appreciation for, great works of classical mastery. If you've never wept at a mosaic, then I don't even know what to do with you.
No.
This is me doing my public radio impression.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think you were telling a story.
Was I?
You said one of the best ones. Mental breakdowns.
Oh yeah, that was basically the story though. Oh. It's like I tried to absorb so much art that by the end of it I was just like, I was 16 at the time, which probably had something to do with it. But, oh God.
That's a train. Oh, cool.
This is so gorgeous. I'm so glad we went to Glasgow.
Yeah.
Even though it has taken us balls ever, and I am swiftly running out of breath.
We're driving on this road we probably never would have driven on.
Yeah. It's so pretty.
Like the only other time I could conceive of driving on this particular road, I can't. I don't know why this road's in the game. That's what I'm gonna say. I guess if you're going from Scotland to Wales, but that's too short for us, so we would have never done that.
Yeah.
Only half of a virtual hour left. Thanks for sticking around for the travel stories. I wish I had another one, because you've told like 3, and I've just got the one about being
if you're still listening now, guys, you ain't getting nothing.
Well, that might not be true. We might have a spark of inspiration. You want to read some poetry?
That's a spark of inspiration.
No, but we still might have one.
Yeah, that's true. Get ready, folks. I'm going to plath your brains out.
Oh, Sylvia Plath. This is some serious shit. Nobody's going to follow it.
Yeah, you're right. Not up for that. Fuck.
Oh, something.
I'm going to read Walter Benjamin at people.
This is not poetry, ladies and gentlemen. Get ready.
You think it's not
you
poetry.
should read Guy Debord if you're going to do that sort of thing.
I should what now?
Read Guy Debord if you're going to do that sort of thing.
I'm not going to read Guy Debord or Gide.
How about Baudrillard? He's certifiably insane.
I'm just going to start reading the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction, unless you have a better idea. It brings me back to my college. Oh, fuck.
Flip to a random page of that. I crashed to give it to you, so now you have to do it.
Oh, shit. We're just never going to get there.
Yeah, just read right there. That's fine.
The China Syndrome.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, this guy's crazy.
The fundamental stake is at the level of television and information. Just as the extermination of the Jews disappeared behind the televised event Holocaust, the cold medium of television having been simply substituted for the cold system of extermination once believed to be exercising through it. So, the China Syndrome is a great example of the supremacy of the televised event over the nuclear event, which itself remains improbable and in some sense imaginary. Besides, the film shows this to be the case without wanting to. The TV is present precisely where it happens is not coincidental. It is the intrusion of TV into the reactor that seems to give rise to the nuclear incident. Because TV is like its anticipation and its model in the everyday universe. Fission of the real and of the real world. Because TV and information in general are a form of catastrophe, in the formal and topological sense Renee Tom gives the word, a radical qualitative change of a whole system. Or rather, TV and the nuclear are of the same nature behind the hot and negentropic concepts of energy and information. They have the same power of deterrence as cold systems do. TV itself is also a nuclear process of chain reaction, but implosive. It cools and neutralizes the meaning and the energy of events. Thus, the nuclear, behind the presumed risk of explosion, that is to say of hot catastrophe, conceals a long, cold catastrophe, the universalization of a system of deterrence.
Postmodernism is bullshit.
I really enjoyed those paragraphs, though. It was fun to read.
He's really fun to read.
Yeah.
Like, Baudrillard is
How many of these are film reviews? The next one's about Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, many of them are. He also talks about TV shows sometimes.
Ground Zero Advertising, Clone Story.
The fun thing about postmodernism is when someone just has such an intoxicating idea, whether or not it has anything to do with truth. Like they just... Look at this tunnel, by the way. Cool tunnel. Yeah.
Oh, is this here's an essay about the David Cronenberg crash, I think. Yeah, that was a pretty cool tunnel. And here we are in Aberdeen.
I've got so many speeding offenses.
Yeah, well, I mean, you were trying to get this over with, and I don't...
That's getting a truck dealer.
Oh, sweet. And I don't blame you, bro. But, I mean, on the whole, like, yeah, yeah, let's talk about postmodernism in the last 5 minutes of this video.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Why not? This is basically the essential problem with postmodernism, is that it is essentially a competition to see who can obfuscate their ideas the most effectively and poetically.
Yeah.
And there is no...
And the obfuscation is necessary because the ideas are empty.
Well, sometimes. I mean, sometimes people who have good ideas become postmodernists, and I ain't gonna lie.
Do they tend to obfuscate their ideas even when they're good ideas?
Because it's the
something like society.
Well, I mean, it's because it's the jargon of the discipline. I mean, these are like not your first wave.
It's something like Society of the Spectacle. I feel like extrapolates on its idea mostly. It's a bit complicated because philosophers don't tend to be good writers.
Yeah.
But,
I knew people who were both postmodernists and had their shit together on a certain basic level because they were in the academy, because this was the way they talked, and these were the ideas that they had fed on to create their ideas. They still had this mishmash of intolerable bullshit. I picked up a history of the typewriter at
I think I've heard good things about that.
No.
Okay.
Oh my God, no. Oh my God, no! I picked up a history of the typewriter at St. Mark's bookshop, and it was just so bad. I kind of want to go. I think I threw it out. It was that bad. I think I just want to share, the problem with postmodernists is that they mistake simile for reality.
Yes.
It's like anything that is like anything else is anything else. As with television and nuclear war right there, which are in fact not remotely alike.
No.
And
Baudrillard has a touch for the provocative title too. One of his books, I believe, is called "The Gulf War Did Not Take Place."
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I believe that his thesis statement there is that it can't really be called a war because it was mostly fought by automatons on the American side. Fun fact that I learned from that book, a genuine fun fact, is that fewer American soldiers died in the Gulf War than would have statistically died had they stayed home and gotten into car accidents.
But how many of them got traumatic brain injuries or Gulf War syndrome or post-traumatic stress disorder?
Probably some, yeah. Still a fun fact, though. God, should I just skip parking?
Even the sun clouds this morning cannot manage such skirts, nor the woman in the ambulance whose red heart blooms through her coat so astoundingly. A gift, a love gift, utterly unasked for, by a sky palely and flamily igniting its carbon monoxides, by eyes dulled to a halt under bowlers. Oh my God, what am I that these late mouths should cry open in a forest of frost, in a dawn of cornflowers?
So that's a no from Sylvia Plath. Bing.
It's Let's Park.
Good work. Thanks,
Hey,
Dan.
sorry about that, everybody.
Oh, you know. You know. I'm a master now. I just got the master rank.
Oh, man. I bet you should probably pick up some...
I want to transport poison.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.